During the investigations, there were no fingerprints were found as a piece of evidence, so it proves that the killer who killed Michelle Marie Martinko had worn gloves on his or her hands. On the evening of December 19, 1979, 1 week before Christmas, Michelle Martinko was brutally murdered. According to Kurt Thomas, Michelle's friend, she had last seen her at around 8 or 9 p.m. 39 years before, through a DNA sample obtained through a paper straw. Jerry Burns, one of her neighboring brothers, was recognized as the murderer of Michelle Martinko. Who was Michelle Martinko? Who killed her? What reasons proved the two prime suspects in this case were innocent? This is your partner in crime stories. Subscribe and let's move along this mysterious journey ahead. On October 6, 1961, Michelle Marie Martinko was born in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Her parents were Albert and Janet Martinko. Michelle was a very kind girl, not just like other typical girls. She loved getting dressed up and always liked to be the best version of herself at every possible time. When she was schooling, she participated in the school's tilling squad and performed in numerous choir and theater productions. Her high school was Kennedy High School. When she was learning, she was an average student and was adored by her teachers. As a girl, she exactly what she had to become and what the path she needed to go through was. Soon after she graduated from high school, she had a dream of being a qualified and skilled interior designer. Not only the ambition, her passion was also to become an interior designer, other than that she had lots of goals and aspirations in her life. Unfortunately, due to an unexpected reason, all of them went only a dream. On the evening of December 19, 1979, 1 week before Christmas, Michelle Martinko was brutally murdered. In the early evening, Michelle had attended a choir banquet at the Sheraton Inn at Cedar Rapids. Soon after that, she had a desire to go shopping with her best friends at the Westdale Mall. As this mall was quite new to their city, they were super excited until going there. As it was the holiday season, many of the city's crowds were also attracted to his newly opened city mall. Michelle was in a hurry to purchase a quite expensive winter coat. But the friends of Michelle had decided to visit there alone, so she had enough space in walking through all the stores, and she even got the chance to spend time with other friends who were working in that mall. According to Kurt Thomas, Michelle's friend, she had last seen her at around 8 or 9 p.m. 39 years before, Jerry Burns, one of her neighboring brothers, was recognized as the murderer of Michelle Martinko. Michelle had been chatting and hanging out for a while when Michelle decided she was ready to go home. While she was leaving there, she also gave a little smile. But what happened to that little smile a few minutes ago? Michelle had never returned home that night after leaving the city mall. By 2 a.m., her parents were sick with worry. So her father had reported this incident to the police. Soon after reporting his daughter's missing to the relevant legal authorities, he had to leave the house for his missing daughter. The police were also behind him. At around 4 a.m., the police found the Martinko family's Buick Electro parked at the northeast corner of the mall. Finally, here Michelle was found inside, slumped over the passenger seat, stabbed 29 times the face, neck, and chest. Defensive wounds had covered all over her arms. Now the police could be able to understand that Michelle has fought back against the killer to save her life. Also, the police realized that she had been killed in her car. So the police started investigations without procrastinating at any point. During the investigations, there were no fingerprints found as a piece of evidence. So it proves that the killer who killed Michelle Martinko had worn gloves on his or her hands. Michelle's cash and purse remained in her car, which ruled out robbery as a possible motive. She was also fully dressed, which indicated that she had likely not been sexually assaulted or tortured. Now the investigation turns into a curious path. When they investigated the nature of the amount and location of her stab wounds, Michelle's case shocked almost all the community at Cedar Rapids. At this time, the crime rates across the country, but this city doesn't have experienced a dangerous nature like that. So the people in that city were feeling safe within their city. But with this case, their fear doubled because this case also had already harmed their lives in a manner. Even the residents who lived in this city need not lock their doors, and the neighbors were also trustworthy. Michelle's family predicts that the prime suspect in their daughter's murder was her ex-boyfriend Andy. According to Michelle's sister, their breakup had been kind of messy, and Andy had been reluctant to accept the result of this relationship from a heartbreaking ending. But the police, even at this point, were interested in Michelle's friend, whom she met in the city mall. That is because the very last person who had seen her was him. So, the police went ahead and invited him to the station for questioning. During that questioning, Kurt had been very consistent with his story, and the police understood that he had never hurt Michelle, and he proved he was innocent. The surprising factor during this investigation was that there were not any cameras in the parking area of that shopping city mall. There were no eyewitnesses for this case, and also no DNA testing capabilities due to lack of evidence. So, the case had started moving towards cold. There was nothing to find out too. For decades, nearly exactly 27 years, the case of Michelle remained unsolved. In 2006, a unit at Cedar Rapids Police Department received a little tip connected to this case. It was a piece of DNA evidence of the killer of Michelle. This evidence was huge up to this point. There had been nothing but the word of the suspects to go off of to prove their guilt or innocence. Now, with the piece of evidence, the investigators had enough space to find whether the killer or suspect for this was Andy, Kurt, or someone else. Soon after that, both men were connected and asked to submit a DNA sample for comparison. Andy had submitted his DNA at the very first chance the police contacted him asking them. So Andy's DNA was not matched, and this proved that Andy was right and he was innocent. Now, the police had waited for Kurt's DNA samples related to their command. But Kurt had somewhat procrastinated submitting samples to the police. The surprising thing is that he had also refused to submit his DNA samples to the faith of this investigation. Then, Kurt's wife, who was a judge, and his lawyer were both adamant that he had not voluntarily handed over his DNA, and it looked bad. As he was late to submit his DNA samples and had refused them too, now the police suspect whether he was the murderer of Michelle's case. There seems to be something wrong and suspicious with Kurt's DNA when compared with the piece of evidence that was already contained in the ongoing investigation. But the surprising thing was that Kurt also was confirmed to be innocent at this point. Still up to 30 years to this point, the investigation continues. Now the police had no anyone else to compare the existing DNA with them. Until 2015, there was no movement in the case of Michelle Marie Martinko, but a single investigator took this DNA to his hand and decided to run until a culprit caught him. So, this specific investigator had connected a company named Parabon Nanolabs, which was a company specialized in DNA phenotyping, and through speaking with them, this investigator had reached them. The investigator knew that they would create an image or several images through this sample of DNA that he had already provided. It would give about the appearance and ancestry of the specific owner of this DNA. And this seemed like a massive breakthrough. An investigation based on technology this sophisticated had never been used on a case in Iowa before, and when the sketch came back, they were kind of surprised to see that it was completely different from the composite. Now, here we return to the 1980s again. The company also succeeded in tracking the age progress of the man, as well as showing his different styles of facial and regular hair. Unbelievable. This attempt was also a failure. One of her neighboring brothers, Jerry Lynn Burns, ironically, was then suspected by the ongoing investigation of having committed the murder. Then, the police took his DNA too. Here's how police succeeded in getting the DNA samples of Byrne. Police had followed him when he was going to lunch one day. They had waited until he paid the bill and left that area. Then, the police made their move armed with a little plastic straw. Finally, his DNA sample was perfectly coupled with Michelle's ones. Later, it was confirmed that 39 years ago, Jerry Burns had brutally murdered Michelle Marie Martino. On December 19, 2018, on a very particular date for Michelle's death, they arrested the culprit, who later was in prison with first-degree murder. There was a special reason to be arrested on that specific date. They selected this date because it was the anniversary of Michelle's murder. What do you think about this case? Stay tuned. We'll catch you with a new nail-biting crime thriller tomorrow.